I'm Bernadette Joy. I'm a huge introvert, so I was like, let me find a place where we can all take a nap together and nobody will judge us. That's my kind of my networking event. And today the topic is rested and invested. And so how do you make good money and not work all the time? So if that's of interest to you, then you came to the right place today. How many of you were told that the ticket to wealth is to work hard? How many of you have been working hard and you're like, this ain't it? So today's topic is Rested and Invested. We're here at this beautiful viewing room by Saatva, which if you can't tell is a mattress company. And I would love for you guys to hear from Brendan.
Welcome everybody. Thank you guys. As an online-only luxury mattress retailer, we really wanted to diversify from a lot of the other competitors in the market. Like everything we use is natural materials. They're all handcrafted. They're all made here in America.
Hi everyone, I'm the VP of Partnerships at Nat Boston. We are the Boston chapter. Our focus is on community empowerment and equity for API professionals in the Boston area. So we hold multiple events throughout the year to bring the community together and to work with our ecosystem of corporate sponsors, community partners, members, and volunteers. We're fully volunteer run, so we're always looking for people to get involved and contribute back to the community. We'd love to see you all at future events, and that's actually how Bernadette and I met. We met last summer at the national convention, so this kind of feels like a full circle moment for me.
Yeah. So again, the power of networking. So what I'm going to ask is for you to find your group color and find a bed to hang around in. So first question is, what is the best investment that you've made? And it's not the stock market. Not the stock market and not real estate. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is on the topic of rested and invested. People make investing synonymous with the stock market, but all an investor means is that you put money into something in order to get more money out or to get more value out of it. So by definition, everyone in here is an investor. You've probably invested in something where you said, I'm going to pay for this thing so that I can get more value out of it. But I think a mattress is a great investment, right? Because who needs more rest? Who feels like they could use more rest? That to me is worth investing in. And one of my philosophies in the book, I talk about the dollar rule, which says that if something comes out to $1 per use, then go ahead and buy it. So if you buy a quality mattress that's going to last for 10 years, then it's going to come out to around $1 per use, and don't worry about that total cost. Think about the investment you're making over a long period of time. Second question is, what's the best splurge that you spent on? And for a lot of us who are Asian in here, it's probably going to be something that our parents said, that's a waste of money. Like for me, Blackpink tickets are my splurge. Okay, so what's the best splurge that you don't feel guilty about? Because we're going to try to remove some of this narrative that we should feel guilty for spending on things that we don't need. And then the third is, what is the best money advice you've ever gotten? Your subscription to ChatGPT is your investment?
Yeah.
I like that. That's a very Gen Z thing to say. I love it. I love it. Yeah, because drowning is not a thing that we're trying to do in retirement. I love that. So I just took swim lessons right before my 40th birthday, and long story short is my swim instructor tricked me to go to the deep side of the pool because I wasn't going to go on my own. And in the beginning, I was making money an excuse as to why I can't do swim lessons, and then I was making time an excuse. Oh, actually, the swim lessons are only $70 for 6 weeks. What if you have the money but you don't have the time? Now, I think a lot of us maybe have parents or seen in our families where like they've spent all these years accumulating money, but they're like working all the time. Something that I want for us to start training ourselves to say, what's the point of having all this money saved up if we can't use it?
I think Amy was talking about her splurge. She's her drama luxury items, and she talks about how it's simple, how telling yourself that
I love that. Do you mind sharing what the luxury item was?
I call it a Celine handbag.
Wow! I love that. I love that. Now, you're probably surprised to hear like a money personal finance person saying yes for the Celine handbag. And so One of the things I talk about in the book, one of the habits that I teach people is to do what I call little luxuries, which is tying some of your accomplishments to say, I get to reward myself for having reached this milestone. It could be travel, it could be a Celine handbag, it could be sending the kids with a babysitter so you can just sleep at night, like whatever is luxury to you. And so money is not always about saving. It's also about actually enjoying the money that you work so hard to earn. And a random person walked in for Saatva, and she was like, what are these books? What's happening here? And so I gave her the spiel, and she's like, can I buy this book right now? Yes, you can. And she asked me, she said, if you're going to retire now, aren't you going to be bored? And that's like such an interesting question to me of just, I have 100 things that I could think of doing other than working all the time. And so for me, this is part of my retirement plan is I have the opportunity and the luxury to be able to do events like this without pressure for making money, without pressure for having someone tell me the way to speak or how to message my stuff, and come out here and just talk to you as me. So I'm going to read a little excerpt and then we'll open up to questions. If you like listening to my voice, the sound of my voice today, the book is also available on audiobook. And I'll say this is coming at a beautiful day today. Today is actually Equal Pay Day. So if you don't know what Equal Pay Day is, it's this time today is how long it takes for the median woman to make the same amount as a median man in the US for the same year. So for 2024, a woman has to work 3 extra months to make the same amount of money. So think about that. Think about that. So I got feedback earlier this week. I was teaching a workshop for people not just in financial literacy, but to become financially free. So the way that I differentiate that is financial literacy is like learning the rules of the game, but financial freedom is winning the game. I was doing a workshop and some person gave feedback to the company and said, Bridget was good. She should stop saying that she's a millionaire. Like, we get it. She should not brag so much. She needs more humility. And I said, first of all, my name is Bernadette. I don't take feedback from people who won't bother to learn my name. But also the reason that I share that I'm a millionaire is because you don't often see our faces attached as money experts in the industry. And so you may see articles pop up about me and say, self-made millionaire. I didn't pick those headlines, but people will click on that because they're not used to seeing our faces attached with those headlines. Especially as many of us are Asian American, we've been told to stay humble and stay low and keep quiet and just do our jobs. No. If you notice, the people who are running a lot of these different places do not lay low, are not very humble, and say a lot of things that aren't even necessarily true, right? So what I'm saying to you here is that speak your truth. Don't be afraid to share your story. Me sharing my story is actually what allowed me to reach financial freedom. Because I was able to share the story, I was able to create a business that's about to cross over $1 million in revenue. I'm able to retire early, and I was able to write this book. So don't stay silent. Thank you. This is from the introduction, and it says, I will go out on a limb and guess that you picked up this book because you are fed up with money stressing you out. Do any of these describe you right now? You don't have enough money saved for what matters to you most. You're unsure of what you should invest in next. You feel behind in your financial status compared to people you may know, especially on social media. You feel guilty for spending money even though you worked really hard for that money. Or you feel like you're wasting time on worry instead of living to your fullest potential. Good news, you just picked up a gold mine with this book, and I promise you, you will get your bang for your buck. Be ready for all the money puns. Your journey with building better money habits begin with acknowledging your worth, your capabilities, and self-respect. Does it seem odd to talk about worth and self-respect in a book about financial information? The truth is, those factors are just as important as the nuts and bolts of loan terms and your 401k. As a financial coach, I made the mistake early on of just considering math when teaching students how to pay down debt. I was surprised to learn about the variety of traumatic events students cited that influenced their money choices. They may not have been mathematically sound decisions, but protected them emotionally. For example, people paid for life insurance they didn't need because they saw someone else pass away without it. Maybe they kept credit card debt even though they had enough cash because they grew up with less money, or avoided closing certain accounts after a divorce because they reminded them of their ex. Your past experiences are valid and your past choices are important to reflect on. But how much longer will you let your past dictate your future? My Crush Plan will help you separate fact from fiction, prioritize your values and goals, and identify and change behaviors that could be holding you back from financial freedom. So, I wanted to say it is possible to climb out of debt. It is possible to ditch the financial anxiety drama, and it is possible to create financial freedom and maybe even retire early, no matter your socioeconomic status or your background. That is, if you're willing to try new, smarter money habits. So get ready to crush your money goals using the power of habits to make lasting financial changes. So that's it. So the Filipino Students Association at BU, they just hosted their annual cultural show, and I got to see it for the first time in 15 years. And they did such a great job. And so many of them came today. But when I was in college, I was not networking. Honestly, I was just drinking a lot. So I'm so proud of you for being here. So the question was, if I could go back in college and give myself advice back then, number one is I would have learned how to budget before I started making money. Because I waited until I started making good money to learn how to budget versus those first early paychecks. I was just like spending them like water. And I was living here in Boston. I had 4 roommates. I was living in Brookline. I remember my salary at the time was $43,500. But after taxes and after putting my 401k, I basically had enough to pay for my rent. And I could only go out on Fridays or Saturdays, not both. And so I would have learned how to budget a lot sooner so that when I started making even more money, that I wasn't creating some of these habits early on. And then the second thing, but if I could go back in time and tell Bernadette, stop buying tequila shots for people and put that money into your 401k instead, I would probably retire at 35, honestly, or like earlier. And so for me, at the time, I really cared about people liking me, and I really cared about like looking cool and all that stuff, which I heard this generation is much better. They don't even really drink that much, so that's good. That's good. And so if I could go back in time, I would put money into a retirement account and make it a habit as soon as I graduated. I would have retired 5 years earlier, probably, if I'd done that. So that was a great question. So the question was, everyone talks about investing, but then how do you actually allocate? So I would highly recommend you grab the book for this. I do believe that there's an order to which people should be doing their financial habits, and a lot of people are investing before they do some of the earlier things. When I talk about the 5 steps, the first one is to curate your accounts. I've coached hundreds of people at this point, and a lot of people will come and say they invested into a brokerage account or they invested money into their 401k, but they still have debt on the other side. And so one of the first things in terms of allocation, from the very beginning, do what I call a cash flow cushion. And that's different from an emergency fund. So a cash flow cushion simply is having 1 month's worth of your basic expenses sitting inside your checking account. I've learned that even people who are making multiple 6 figures, they're sometimes still acting as though they're paycheck to paycheck because they're waiting for the next paycheck to show up before they make any other choices. Do a 1 month's worth of a cash flow cushion sitting inside their checking account so they're not waiting for the next paycheck anymore. And so all your bills get paid automatically, and then on the back end, your next paycheck is refilling that. And now your brain is opened up to think about investing, to think about saving, to think about all these other things that you'd rather do. Then you need to have at least 1 month's worth of a regular emergency fund. I call it a keep calm fund. And I say keep calm because people tend to panic when things happen. And so this is not a break glass, you can only use it in medical emergencies. This is say, for example, if like my in-laws decided to show up one day, I'm like, okay, then let's go out. Let's go do stuff, right? It doesn't have to always be an emergency. Then I tell people that you're willing to focus on paying down your debt. And so I have clients who are now in their 50s and 60s and they're still paying off student loans. Because they were told it's a low interest rate, so it's not a big deal. You should put it into the market instead. But now you've been carrying this debt for 20, 30 years, so how much did we pay in interest? If anyone is carrying any sort of consumer debt other than a mortgage, and I always tell people focus on paying down that debt first, especially as a newer investor, you're not gonna find a return on your money that's gonna be better than a 20% interest on your credit card, right? So assuming you've done all that stuff, then the question becomes about allocation. And in the book, I do talk about assessing what kind of risk that you are tolerant with. So when we talk about investing, there's lots of different ways that you can invest. Obviously, everyone talks about the stock market, but frankly, to me, The stock market can only get you so far, and especially if you are someone who actually wants to invest in your values, a lot of times we're investing into companies or people that we may not necessarily want to support. Being able to put money into your retirement accounts is the first place that you go, and then I look at people's plans to say, okay, what do you care more about? Do you want to pay off your house and have that as a place that you can then free up your expenses? Or do you want to invest in starting a business? For me, for example, I'm taking the money that I used to put in the stock market and I'm putting it into angel investing now. And I'm investing in communities of color and women-owned businesses because I'd rather put my money in those businesses right now. So the question of the allocation piece is, if you're working with someone like a financial advisor or financial coach, you need to have the question about what you actually care about investing in and what your values are. So thank you for that question. So interestingly for me, I found that I have a pretty diverse clientele, and I think that's virtue of the fact that I'm Asian. And two things that have come up specifically that I've seen in terms of trauma is, one, this idea of working really hard and staying in this particularly very stable career. And I see a lot of clients who are coming in saying, I want to go try doing this different thing, but my family just doesn't support me. My family thinks this is crazy. My family was just like, what? You're leaving your six-figure job to do what? And they really thought that I was just going to become like an Instagram influencer. They didn't realize I was building all these other things. So there's two trauma responses that I've noticed, particularly with Asian clients. One is actually over-saving. Clients who are like holding on to too much money because they're just waiting for the next shoe to drop, or their parents taught them to save money, but they never taught them to invest it. And so I've had to really have meaningful conversations to say, it's good, we have this pot of money, and right now, at least put it into high yield savings. I still have clients who don't even put it into a high yield savings account to say, oh, let's at least earn 4% on it. But then the next step is, now we're going to take a risk on it, and a lot of them will say, my family says we need to save, we need to save, we need to save, so we don't have this investing thing. And so one of the things that I really work on with them is doing some of those things, like the risk tolerance thing, and ask them, what is the reason that you're really worried about investing? The second thing that I've seen is, in terms of like a trauma response, is like over education. A lot of us are like really good at studying and really good at getting information and data, and so we wait until we have the perfect information before we make a choice. Should I move? Should I not move? Or let me check like 100 other sources before I make this investment. And that's actually a trauma response. You feel like you need to have the perfect conditions in order to make a money move, but how often is a perfect condition? Pretty much never. What's the best choice that we can make right now? And let's use the money that we can like part with. And we're not going to take all your money, invest it all right now, so we do it in little chunks. I see a lot of clients who spend a lot of time over explaining themselves or trying to, and it's coming from this idea that she's like always feeling like she has to prove herself, because she's always thinking, oh, they're not going to trust me, they're not going to believe me because I don't look like that person, or I don't come across as like credible. And I used to do that because I was that kind of stereotypical that I would walk into an executive meeting and they thought I was the intern, even though I was the head of HR. So I would take all this time to explain and realizing like, I'm credible, I know what I'm doing. So a lot of those trauma responses, they're disguised as being like type A or overachiever. A lot of times they end up being trauma responses, and those are things that I highly recommend, like you said, to talk to a therapist or talk to your money coach about how you can actually deploy money in a way that feels comfortable for you and build that skill over time. In the book, there is a chapter about negotiating. That's a habit that I tell people. Don't wait until you have to negotiate or you're in a corner to negotiate. Negotiation should be a habit. You should negotiate all the time. So I joke in the book how like my parents were like notoriously good at asking for discounts like all the time, like haggling when we go travel and stuff. Do that everywhere. So one of the little tips that I give people, this is from me being an HR person, is actually use an exact number that isn't round. What I mean is, if you're negotiating salary and you say, I want 100K, you're gonna say, I want $101,258. Because what does that do? When you hear that number, if someone said to you, I'm negotiating, I want $101,258, what do you assume that person did? Calculated their worth, did research, they calculated their worth, they've done their research, they've done some benchmarking, and they have to prove why. They have to actually have some backup documentation. So coming out of college, what was my first investment? So I would say college was just an investment of itself, because I did the dual degree program at BU. So I did 2 degrees and still graduated in 4 years. And because back then I was just like, I'm gonna get as much out of this money, this tuition money as possible. So I would say that, but then coming out of BU, my best investment back then was my retirement plan at my company. And back then I only did the match. In hindsight, I wish I'd done so much more, like I said earlier. But that money, even when I was only at that company for 2 years, that money grew to like my first 100K. That was like the first, and all I did was just put money into that retirement plan. But then the second best investment that I made post-college was, this is gonna sound really corny, was my husband, AJ, who's there. And I met him because his brother and I went to BU, but I can't tell you how many couples I have to coach. They're just not on the same page about money. And I was very fortunate that I married a guy who's just as frugal as I am and likes a lot of the same things as me. But we talked about money and investing very early before we even got married, like while we were still dating. And so a lot of people later on, they're like trying to get on the same page about money and finances, and they didn't talk about it early enough. So I would say a really good partner for me was really helpful to not have to do this alone. And look, I have a built-in Instagram husband now. Hey, I hope all of you get to meet Nicole before you leave. She's another fellow financial coach, and she's here in the Boston area. And so I am a big proponent of like collaboration over competition. There's room for all of us. So things that I'm excited for is I'm trying to follow Blackpink on their tour right now. So K-pop stuff for sure. I am really excited to do a lot more investing into other companies right now. As I mentioned, the bulk of my time, other than this book tour, is spending time with these companies to get them to a point where they're investable. And then I'm really excited to like, true to this event, like just sleep. I've been on the road a lot and speaking at a lot of engagements, but I've done probably like 100 plus like press interviews in the last couple of weeks. So it's just a lot of, hi, I'm Bernadette, and you should crush your money goals. And if y'all get to know me, I'm actually very introverted, so it just takes a lot of energy out of me. Not because I don't like it, it's just, I fellow introverts understand. We like being here, but we just go home and then we want to sleep. So I'm really looking forward to sleeping. And then the last thing is I decided I really wanted to spend a lot more time with family. And I was just sharing this story is this book tour has allowed me to reconnect with a lot of people that I haven't gotten to see. And I haven't really gotten to do that over the last couple of years because I've been working very hard at building this business. And so this year I'm very much looking forward to just reconnecting with a lot of my family. Thank you so much. Let's give ourselves a round of applause.